All right. Can you everybody see that?
Yep.
So this is some of this is going to be rudimentary, but I'm going to walk it through. So cybersecurity is, it's basically the internet is a global network of computers exchanging digital information. Cybersecurity, the protection of internet connected systems such as hardware, software, and data from cyber threats. It's to prevent unauthorized access to data centers and computerized systems. So I'm showing you this picture that if you have a business, a computer, I'm sure everybody does, mobile device, all this, and you don't have cybersecurity, it's basically like having a home and opening your door and just leaving it open and saying, I trust everybody. No one's going to ever want to come in and do anything to our house. So these are some security tips to keep in mind. The most important, be aware that you are a constant target for hackers. That's just a reality these days. To keep all software up to date so you don't have any vulnerabilities. Avoid phishing or phishing scams for emails and phone calls. 4, practice good password management. And 5, be careful what you click on so you don't click on malware attacks. Also, never leave devices unattended, and safeguard your protected data such as social security numbers, credit cards, etc. Use mobile devices safely. Be sure to lock your device. And also install antivirus, anti-malware protection. And last, make sure you back up your data regularly in case you do get hacked. Some security tools are important. Network security monitoring, to encryption, which protects data by scrambling text. Antivirus software, which will find viruses and malware. Network intrusion detection, which monitors your traffic. Website vulnerability scanning also does the same. And penetration test, which is called a pen test. You can hire a company that will simulate an attack on your company or your computers to see what kind of vulnerabilities you have and what you need to do to fix them. So some of the security tools is, protect your emails, data protection, anti-malware, firewalls, and mobile security. For websites and hosting, pretty much same thing. Make sure you secure your passwords and update frequently. Back up your sites regularly. Install an SSL certificate, which is pretty much mandatory these days on all websites, but some people don't have it. It's an encrypted link between server and browser. Limit user permissions and access to your sites and your data. Invest in anti-malware software. Apply firewall software to scan your web traffic and keep all software up to date. So, as we mentioned before, that we have we provide premier web hosting. This is a landing page, and we do provide really good security with firewalls, malware scanners, SSL security, which is included in your hosting, IP blockers, database backups, two-factor authentication, which is important, and more. So we'll talk about that later. Company security hackers can break through a remote working environment network when company servers are improperly secured. So again, deploy multi-factor authentication, very important. Manage your user access to improve security, to know who's has access. Monitor end user activities to detect intruders. Protect the company against departing employees. So if you have any employees that have left, to make sure they don't have access to your server and website and so forth. Provide anti-phishing training for employees. So phishing and smishing. So actually phishing is pronounced supposedly phishing, and that's probably because they're fishing for suckerfish to click on things and steal your data. It's sending fraudulent emails masquerading as a legitimate source with links or attachments to click or to call, tricking you into revealing sensitive information, stealing. Smishing is pretty much the same thing as fraudulent practice through sending text messages with the same intent. So there's like some emails that come in. We get frequently, things like this, where it says you sent a payment of $990 to Coinbase. You've got, if you look up here, make sure when you look at the address of what it's coming from, looks suspicious. Don't click on it. Here's one that just came in from Samuel Matson. Don't know who he is. It's a mini storage, whatever attachment. attaches your invoice receipt, click here with a little zip file. That's a no. Don't do that. I can download malware. Here's another one that comes in occasionally from Michelle Jones, which is not Michelle Jones, but her, and you probably might have received these as well, saying, oh, I'm too busy, please email me back instead of calling or whatever. But just be very wary what comes in on your emails. Here's another one from Amazon that came in, hooray, Todd, you just purchased this equipment for $15.99, track your order, call here, all these things. Didn't order it, not going to click on it. And then you get these things, messages, secure, view secure message, password expiration, update your password, all these things. But check right here, see where it's coming from. This is suspicious. Look at who it is.
Todd, I like the one before that with the church.
The which one?
The one a couple ago, it was a church. Like, oh, yeah. Well, it's a church.
Right, of course. Yeah, I'm gonna want to click on that. So this is what you look for when you get like a message. Check on the where it's coming from. Often there's misspellings. It's something that you don't recognize. They're often asking you to do something that typically you've never requested. There's usually a demand, like you've got to respond in 24 hours or right now, and check what the response is on the email link, because it's usually illegitimate. If it's suspicious, don't click on it. And I'll give you some examples later about this. Social media threats, malicious plus advertising is maladvertising. It's about compromising your computer, mobile device by downloading a malicious code on it when you click on text request or advertisement. Also note that the QR codes can also direct you to a fraudulent website, and which can steal your information. And also social media, beware of Facebook friend requests and ads and messenger links. Here's I gotta use this now here. So here's a screenshot of some recent friend requests that I've had have come in. A few of these people are already friends, so I know that they've hacked the email. The bottom one is my sister, so I know that that's not who it's actually from. And then you get one like this, you click on it, I just kind of see who it is. You go, oh, this person's from France, she's kind of cute, single. Check out about if there's any mutual friends that are connected with her. Usually things like this, they have no posts, no information, very little information, and it's usually more likely not who they say they are. So don't click on it. Oh, modems and routers. So the modem connects your home office network to the internet. The router lets all of your wired and wireless devices use that internet connection to route data to all the multiple devices. And so very important, number one is change the pre-installed username and password that it comes with to protect it. And then two, change the name of your Wi-Fi signal. And don't use something like your family name or something that's recognizable, the street address, anything that someone can figure out easily. And then you've probably heard of this, the Internet of Things. There's a threat to that. The Internet of Things refers to the rapidly growing network of connected objects that are able to connect and exchange data in real time using embedded sensors. These are in thermostats, cars, lights, refrigerators, and many appliances today. It's called the Internet of Things. And if you don't have strong firewall security, you want to have it to make your entire network invisible to the internet so people can't hack into them. All they have to do is hack into one of these vulnerable devices and they get into your everything else. So that's something to be aware of. So in conclusion, just number one, very important, stay vigilant and aware of these cyber threats, because they're out there and people are constantly fishing for trouble, for suspicious emails, requests, links, etc. And make sure you secure your networks and devices with firewalls and strong passwords and two-factor authorization. And then again, back up your data regularly. So those are the main key things that I'll pass it off to Jude, and then we can do a Q&A afterwards.
Okay. Here, let me start this. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So as Todd was saying, it's a really dangerous world. So these are just some of the numbers that I pulled. So there was almost 800,000 cyber crime complaints in 2020, with 4.2 billion in losses. Some of the ones that we know about, right, because they got into the public domain, is the SolarWinds cyber attack. So that was 18,000 private and governmental computers that were hacked, and it's even today we don't know how much that loss was. And then the Continental Energy ransomware, where thieves took over the Continental Energy network, stopping the pipeline until they paid $5 million in ransom. Of course, they did actually get 5 million, or half of that back. It was in Bitcoin. Somehow they were able to get it back. I've actually had a couple of claim situations I wanted to tell you guys about. So I have a company that builds ticketing systems, and they build ticketing systems for a bunch of minor league teams. And so it was somehow bad guys found a back door, and they were actually able to get into the ticket system. And when you, what they did is they set up a dummy system. And so that when you were buying a ticket, you thought you were buying a ticket for the Mud Hens. In actuality, you were paying the bad guys. And they actually were able to keep that trick going for many, many tickets, and the system ended up costing everyone about 70,000 in losses. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is this happened about 3 months ago. I have a lawyer client, and believe it or not, the thieves broke into his office and they stole physical files. And so the question became, well, are those physical files private information, and would that be covered under a cyber policy? And the answer is, turns out that it is. Luckily, the lawyer figured out that actually even though they were stupid enough to steal these physical files, no private information was released. And so they were happy about that. But it turns out that these cyber policies will cover loss of physical files. So just kind of thought that was interesting. So Todd kind of went over some of these: ransomware, phishing, data breach. But really what I wanted to talk about too was that what most people don't realize is that when you have suffered a loss, it's your responsibility to notify everyone in your database that there's been a breach. And you have to pay for 1 year of credit reporting, and you have to mail a notice to each person in your database that there's been a breach. And that's how you have to say you have to pay for the mailing, and you have to pay for 1 year of credit reporting. And if it's bad enough and you get reported to the government, you could be actually subject to fines. So not a good situation. The other thing, of course, the big guns, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they never take responsibility. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to e-commerce companies and Stripe and all these third parties. They totally waive their rights. So, if you ever end up in an e-commerce situation and you expect your third party, vendor to step up and take responsibility, they just don't do it. When you're agreeing to work with Stripe, you're actually saying that anything that happens, it's your responsibility.
Jude, I have a question about that. So my local UPS office, where I have a PO box, they had a data breach in December, and all they said was, "Gee, I'm sorry, we don't know whose information was compromised, but this is the scope of what was compromised, but we don't know who." And I thought, shouldn't you be offering private cybersecurity? subscription. How do I go about just talk to the manager there and say, listen, I'd like this?
Yeah, so Todd, what would you say? I would think so. Yeah, I would think that they have cybersecurity software, but I would definitely talk to the manager.
Well, this was a break-in where stuff was stolen out of the mailboxes.
Yeah. Oh, out of the mail. Oh, I thought it was a cyber. Yeah. I mean, they should have insurance that would cover that.
Gotcha. I'll check it out. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hey, Jude, this is Nicholas.
Nicholas?
As a small business owner, how do you know if you've been breached?
Well, someone would have to come to you and tell you. Like in the claim situation, well, obviously the lawyer knew that he had been broken into, but with the ticketing system, they finally figured out that people weren't getting their tickets. Like, hey, wait a minute, I paid my money, but I didn't get anything. I didn't get a receipt or what have you. So, but yeah, someone would have to come to you and say, hey, how did
And then secondly, how would you know, like, for example, I've got business files, I have personal files, I have like friend files. How would you know which ones are actually breached? I mean, is your whole computer breached? So you even have to, let's say, contact non-business clients, or do you have any feel about that?
Well, it's everyone in the database. So
Which could include non-business.
it could.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about, so I have a follow-up question to that, because everybody's being sold things like Dropbox, iCloud accounts, Amazon Cloud, these cloud accounts, Apple is doing cloud. So are these firms going, if we save our stuff there, does that mean they're going to pay for our stuff? Do we have to notify our friends and family if they get compromised, if we store everything on the cloud?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know what the waiver looks like. When you sign up for Dropbox, you'd have to read it. But every waiver I've read, with these larger third-party companies, they're just saying that by you agreeing to use the service, you're waiving any rights to come after them for data breaches.
They should notify you. It happened with GoDaddy recently, where all our clients that had managed WordPress sites, and this was like months, they finally acknowledged that they were hacked, and they said, oh, by the way, if you have a managed WordPress site, you need to do this, update your passwords, you have to your information could have been compromised, and they just did a basic little notification like that out to everybody. But that was it. And it was their poor security too that caused it.
Okay, so the good news is that there are insurance products that exist to cover all of these issues. So some of the things I was talking about before: ransomware, phishing, data breach, loss of private information. The insurance, it's much different than a typical insurance policy in that there is a component that has monies available to pay for these, either pay for the mailing, pay for the credit, service monitoring. So it's a pretty robust type of policy. So as long as you have the insurance, you should have coverage for it. Going back to what Todd said, the difference today, it's very interesting, is that what my clients are dealing with from a cyber insurance renewal point of view is that they are totally having to change how they operate their business. And the biggest one is the one Todd was talking about, which is multi-factor authentication, which again just means that when you log into, Amazon, you're required to okay it on a separate device. So every client that I have now that has cyber insurance and is dealing with private information, so any software company, any digital ad agency, whatever they are, if they have a cyber policy, everyone in the company and every contractor they deal with must use multi-factor authentication. Absolutely. And then what they have is there's something called endpoint response. And this is basically a sniffer, piece of software that sits on your network and looks for intrusions. So you've got two things. You got the multi-factor authentication that's required, and they must put on this sniffer software to constantly monitor their network. And if they're not doing that, then their cyber insurance can't be renewed. So that's, but it's interesting because it's a tale of kind of two worlds. So you've got these software companies and e-commerce companies, digital ad agencies, everyone like that that's dealing with a lot of private information. And so they're getting much tougher. And then you've got the other side, which is a lot of people like us, lawyers, accountants, anyone dealing with an office situation. In your business owner's policy, whoever you might have, you can still get a cyber defense sublimit of, up to 500,000. So 250,000, 500,000, and it's still Hartford, Travelers, whoever, it costs a couple $100 a year, and it gives you the same protection that it gives, some of these larger e-commerce companies. So I'll tell you, every month, as we go along, and you see as much cyber situations happening, but these Main Street, insurance companies continue to offer this sublimit. So anyone that has a BOP, I would definitely, which is a business owner's policy, I would definitely pay the extra couple $100 to get cyber defense. Okay. Now, the only other thing I just want to say here, they don't cover the fines by the U.S. or so that's come up before. Okay, so have a little fun here. So believe it or not, everyone, there is something that's called the dark web pricing index. And this basically says what your information is worth. Okay. So Bob, you're on Netflix. All right. You're watching Emily in Paris. By the way, I thought Emily in Paris was about our Emily being in Paris, but it took me to season 2 to figure out, no, it actually. So Bob, your Netflix account gets hacked. What do you think that is worth to the bad guy?
$5,000.
$5,000. Okay. What do we think?
200,000.
Higher or lower?
I'm somewhere between 5,000 and 200.
I'd say $50.
Yeah, that's much closer. It's actually $14.
Well, Nicholas knows my Netflix account and knows that I never watch.
He has several Netflix accounts.
Okay, Nicholas.
Yes. So I don't understand that stuff. Okay.
All right, Nicholas. So if Netflix is worth $14, how much is your Hulu account?
Well, I'd say less.
You would say. What do you think, Frank? What would you say?
$10.
Yeah, I'd say 10 or less. Yeah.
$4. $4 for your Hulu account. So obviously, I always laugh when I hear that because it's like, well, if I'm the Hulu CEO, I want to be talking to these bad guys because obviously Hulu is not in as much demand as Netflix. So, okay, Georgina, how much is your Visa? If you've gotten hacked, your Visa's been hacked with with the security code. So it's a live Visa with the security code. What do you think? What do you think that's worth to the bad
I
guy?
think that'd be a lot closer to what Bob said. At least 5,000, maybe way more.
No,
Okay.
$20.
What?
Okay. I'm going to say it's somewhere in between those two. It's
150.
no.
So we're gonna have to go on the dark web and buy a bunch of accounts, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely, because it's $600.
Bob, you don't know this, but it's more than $14 a month for a Netflix account. So
Oh.
if you can get it for $14, that's a bargain.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is that I'm going to guess, because I was surprised at how low some of these prices are. But I mean, it should scare everyone, the fact that this pricing index even exists, right? I mean, so, anytime the bad guys need something, they can just say, oh, okay, well, I want to make $600. I'm going to, swipe someone's Visa.
Jude?
Yeah.
It's Nicholas again. Like on all my credit cards, as well as my bank statements, anytime there's a charge of more than $1, I get a text.
That's good. Yeah.
So the thing is, if someone stole my credit information, they wouldn't get very far.
They don't get very far. Exactly.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
that's-
so
that's-
why would it be worth so much money?
Right. And and again, that's why I think some of the pricing is lower than we would think.
Well,
Patrick, what do you think?
I'm guessing they're gambling on the fact that they're going to get away with it on some people that don't
Yeah.
check their accounts.
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things about credit cards, though, is, and this is one of the reasons why you should get this thing, when a vendor like Patrick and Company, we do a lot of credit card transactions, both on our website and on in our retail stores. And if there's fraud, it's on us. So no matter what happens, the agreements, like Jude was saying, and so they, on the margin, they get away with a few things. They get into our store and buy $120 worth of stuff, and they got $120. Now obviously on a cyber level, they're trying to do much more volume, but if they can get 1,000 cards and get $120,000, $120 purchases each, that's $100,000, $120,000 worth of transactions. So I'm sorry, one question, what was the value of the Visa card information?
$600.
600.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it brings up, as you know, I follow this stuff a lot. It's actually a fascinating argument. There's actually a big argument right now between retailers and e-commerce vendors, because as we know, over the holidays, we all saw the wildings, right? I mean, the break-ins where they would just rush, a department store and rip off a bunch of purses or what have you. Okay. And so it just looks, really bad. Well, the thing is, what happens is there's an outlet. See, now with e-commerce, there's an outlet these people have. Okay. So they'll take, they'll take that Coach, leather bag, and they'll put it up on Etsy, or they'll put it up on RealReal. And so there's a law that the retailers are trying to get passed, that, if you're an Etsy vendor, if you're a vendor on RealReal, you should have your own tax ID number. You should have, a real address. So they want the e-commerce vendors to agree to make it more legit, to kind of stop this stuff from happening.
The black
And
market.
right now, the e-commerce vendors are fighting them on it. So some have agreed, but a lot of them have not, because they know, the e-commerce vendors know exactly where a lot of this stuff's coming from, and they make money from, right? Because they take their cut, from the bad guys selling that Coach bag. So it's a real fight right now.
But isn't there a new law that's going to be passed, Jude, that requires them to do this? So they're not going to have a choice?
They're trying. They're trying to get it passed, and the e-commerce vendors are some e-commerce vendors are fighting them on, and so it is not passed yet. So
I want to just add something to what Frank was talking about. If you're in a situation where you're a vendor and the person's right there, you could either enter the credit card number or take the card and swipe it. If the card or tap it or whatever the card can do. If you have the card present, you do not have the liability. If the card is not present when the transaction is done, then you own the liability.
Mm.
So if you can take a physical card in person, it's always better.
Mm-hmm.
I will push back here on a little of that. We've had problems where someone has swiped a card in our stores, and the burden of proof is on us. All of a sudden they come back and say, "Not my charge." Now it probably wasn't, because I assume the card holder is honest. So somebody stole their card, or somehow got a manufactured a card, and then really we don't have, as a small fish, much recourse with the banks or with the big credit card processors, and we usually end up just eating that transaction.
What can happen is something happens in the reading process, and the clerk or the salesperson says, "Oh, just give me the card. I'll type in the number." That's the same as card not present. So I don't know your specific situation, but not swiping or tapping the card, doing a manual entry is the same as a phone order where the card is not present.
Yeah, any manual entry, yeah, it's going to be that. You either have to swipe or tap at this point for any standing. Generally, we're very forward-footing on these things because
Yes.
of the nature of the agreements they make you sign, and because they basically take the money out of our account. It's a two-way street. They take the money out and say, prove that this person was here. And so,
Frank,
what are we
Frank,
going
does
to
the
do
same
for $100?
Does the same thing happen with a chip card?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if that's actually happened with a chip card or if it's only been the swipes. It doesn't I'm not talking about something that happens every day. It just happens occasionally. If it happens every day, we'd have to really do something about it. But it happens occasionally that we have a transaction, and usually it's just we're not in our stores. We're not doing $10 million transactions, right? So we're not going to hire 15 lawyers to try to hunt down the $100 transaction. We just eat it. But that is the nature of the beast, I guess.
So Frank, are you
But I
saying
guess my point is the whole system is set up to make it easy for people to use credit cards, and it's on the vendors to pay for that. And so if there's a huge breach with a security breach, I'm sure that you're going to be treated the same way, which is, it's not our problem, it's your problem. You have to pay for it. And that's, of course, where Jude comes in and his product.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Just as a story, last April, a former exec's Sarming Construction, somebody hacked into our engineer's email, and we were very clever. They just waited in the woods until we sent Sarman saying your $35,000 is due. They then sent Sarman an email saying, "Don't pay the $35,000, send it to this bank account instead." And there was a long discourse because Sarman got back and said, "Oh, we already sent the check." And then they told Sarman, oh, well, as soon as, then they told us, Atlas, as soon as you get the check, send it back to us. In the meantime, Sarman went ahead and sent the $35,000 to some bank back in North Carolina, and it vanished, of course. It's put us in a really uncomfortable position because Sarman is one of our bigger customers, and we said, we never got the money. And Sarman said, "You sent the money." And so Ted Bacon's been involved, and Todd's been involved, and TechLeak's been involved. But so far, we haven't got the money from Sarman, and Sarman doesn't want to pay us the money. And it's pretty ugly.
Oh, God.
So Hugh, do you have cyber insurance?
I don't know. I'll have to ask my son, but it's not our money at this point, according to Ted.
Yeah,
It's Sarman's problem. They sent the money to the wrong people.
Yeah, it would be
So-
Sarman's insurance that
Mm.
would respond. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes on these cyber policies, they do have, that is, I forgot to mention that one thing, phishing, just like this, is sometimes excluded. And so I always have to make sure, you always have to make sure that phishing losses are.
That's a big
included and
exclusion.
covered. Right, that it is not an exclusion, yeah. Because of exactly this, there's been so many losses that a lot of these carriers are starting to exclude these phishing losses.
I have a question on Frank. You're saying as a merchant that if someone came into your store and purchased something for $1,500, say, or more, with a credit card, a valid credit card, it swipes through, it goes through, and then the person that's a stolen credit card and the owner says, I didn't purchase this, and so the credit card denies payment, and you're stuck with this. And what's your only recourse is to your insurance company?
Well, I actually don't know that we have much of a recourse. I mean, obviously, if we really were talking about a huge loss of some sort, we would hope that we'd have some insurance coverage for that. And that's, of course, what this meeting is about. Mostly, I think these transactions have been pretty small. So we try to run it down. We try to call the person and say, did you or did you not come into our store? Here's the receipt. Sometimes that works. I think the last time it was somebody's daughter's boyfriend or something. He kind of knew who it was, but that didn't mean he had to pay. So as far as he was concerned, and at some point we just have to, it's a few. I think it was a couple $100. We just have to walk away. So part of the thing is I don't know what our recourse is, but I'm sure it's more expensive than, or it's not worth the cost of chasing down a few $100 transactions. Knock on wood, it's never been more than a couple $100 or even less.
Yeah. Bob?
Yeah, I have, I'm on, right? I have renter's insurance, commercial renter's insurance, because I'm a tenant in a suite of offices, law offices. So can I be covered under or am I covered? I mean, my insurance is like $500 a year. So obviously if I have to pay another $200 for the stuff, that's like a 40% increase. But I just don't know, would the landlord be covered for this insurance you're talking about, or would that be in a separate renter's policy for me?
No,
Okay.
yeah, it would be tied to your policy. Yeah, and yeah, you'd have to get it added to the policy. And no, as far as I know, the landlord would not have it.
By the way, Christy Kennett couldn't come to the meeting, but she wanted to pass on that since we're talking commercial, that for homeowners insurance, that cyber theft, cyber crimes, and ID restoration for about $25 per year, adding to your policy, it would cover that. So something to consider.
Yeah. Yep. Frank?
Yeah, I had one question. Todd was talking a bit about having strong backups. When and this kind of goes piggyback on what Alex was asking about the cloud, sort of in a different way. When I'm putting stuff on Dropbox or in my little Dropbox folder and it's syncing to the web and then I can get it anywhere, is that a backup, or are most of these attacks going to ruin those files as well? Or maybe you don't know the answer to that, or you have to buy premium or something to get that service.
You can.
In other words, if it comes in and erases everything on my computer here, will that erase it on all the copies on the servers? Or ransomware type.
No, not on your, the stuff on Dropbox could get lost, so have a backup or anything that you've got stored there.
Okay, so the cloud backup is not enough to defend against these.
My understanding
that's not a sufficient backup.
It's a separate login though. I mean, it's
my understanding is Dropbox puts a local copy on your computer, but it's backed up to the cloud, and someone would have to break into your Dropbox in the cloud, which would be a massive Dropbox breach.
Yes.
Other than just a Frank O'Brien type breach, I think.
Yes.
And yeah, that's their livelihood, to protect that information. I mean, it can happen, but
Yeah, that's what
I mean,
I think.
part of what Dropbox does is it syncs, right? So if I change a document on my computer and then I resave it, and then it goes back. Anyway, we're getting really into the weeds here, but yeah, okay, it's interesting. So hopefully you're right about that. It's the easy way to back up.
Again,
They do have settings in Dropbox where you can set it up so that when you delete locally, it doesn't delete your copy in Dropbox. So you just have to make sure how you set up. But then you have to manually go in and clean up your Dropbox every once in a while too. But if you're using it as a backup, a pure backup solution, you want to set it up that way.
yeah, usually the settings. I have something on the smishing or the phishing story. I think I mentioned this before, but we had a client that has a website, a Facebook account that they sell, it's a business account and it's a photography company. And they had like another photographer that had access to their Facebook account to be able to post things and so forth. And this other person, a photographer, had got a text message that was a malware, clicked on it, took over his account, also took over, then he was able to take it over the Facebook account, got in there, eliminated him as a administrator, and started posting pornography on it and all sorts of stuff. And he was freaking out. But also as a result of that, because he had access to our client's account, they took over her account too. And she called up us, and Helene spent, I don't know how long it was weeks, trying to deal with Facebook to explain to them what happened, that someone took over the account, and they had to provide documentation that this was the owner and blah, 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 and eventually got resolved, but they weren't very helpful, but eventually but it's, it's something to be wary of, because you don't want that stuff your accounts to be taken over. Also, Jude, you were saying about the on the dark web index. I'm wondering if what it would, if the last one was about banking accounts, like if someone gets access to a debit card or something like that. That probably would go for a higher amount, because if someone uses that, there's no protection if the money's gone, right?
Yeah, it is a little higher, but not as high as you would thought. Like the one with the 3,000 limit was, it would cost you on the dark web $1,300.
Yeah.
So
I guess you would have to find out what balance they had to know whether or not that would be a worthwhile, because maybe you'd buy the information and it would have like $50 on it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It's like gambling.
This thing with cybersecurity, I just 2 days ago, I had one of my clients, this maritime organization that's international. They had a speaker from Denmark, Copenhagen, that monitors all the international trade on the waters, the sea, the carriers, and so forth. And what's going on with the supply chain problems and so forth. But he went through all the lists of the risks and forecasting for 2020, which wasn't very good. But he said top of the list of risk is cybersecurity. He said that scares the hell out of him. He said already ports have been compromised, shut down, and it's just he keeps telling everybody. He said, bump up your cybersecurity. It's so damned important, and that's why this thing called the pen test, where they have a company come in and they basically do an attack on your system to find out what kind of vulnerabilities there are, so you can fix that, so people can't breach your system.
Just quick, Todd, can Jaime's company do that for us, or is it got to be more sophisticated, do one of these tests to make sure that?
I think probably to some degree, but yeah, I just have to check with them. They may hire, get another firm that does that. But that's something we don't have. But there are firms that will do that for you.
Right. Okay. Just on a slightly different topic, but very important. We're talking about hacking and stuff. In the estate planning area, we're getting worried about what happens when somebody dies and has a bunch of passwords and nobody knows what those passwords are or where they are. And you need to really be careful with your passwords, or at least have backups, copies of them in a safe, or people have to know where they are. And you need to think about that in a way that we haven't had to think about it before, because there's all this information that belongs to you, even if you're not hacked. If you die or become disabled or become incompetent, your bank account information, all your pictures, all your social media and stuff. Yeah, so that's just a whole nother area that the estate planning people need to worry about and plan with. And so I just throw that out there.
It actually is a really good point.
No, it's a really good point. You know, the whole thing about Bitcoin, right? You guys know this, right? I mean,
Yeah, use the code, you're gone. Yeah, you're whatever.
You only get, you literally get 3 chances to input your ID, and if it's wrong, it disappears. So
Along those same lines, people don't realize that when you buy a book on Amazon, that book is only yours as long as your login is active. So if you have a loved one that has 400 or 500 books and you think that's a family asset, you better make sure that it doesn't have to be Amazon. You just have to have the Amazon account. Otherwise, all those assets go away.
Yeah.
Audiobooks and because Audible is now owned by Amazon. So all your audiobooks and all your textbooks go away.
Patrick.
If the account gets closed. So if someone in your family dies and you close the account, the Amazon account, then all the books and everything they've ever bought goes away.
Last summer, someone I know that's really close to me really got hacked, and it was big time. It was national news, and they had to pay $3 million in Bitcoins to get things back. It's real. I think that we all should be very careful. We had an issue with our Salesforce where a company who did work for us changed our entire system to revert to them, unknown to us. But nonetheless, we found out. Luckily, I knew the owner of Salesforce who could vouch for me as the owner and the owner of all the information. Otherwise, it would have been up shit creek. It's crazy what people do and how they do it, and how it's just possible to go about your life without knowing someone is doing something until something happens. And for the life of me till today, I honestly don't understand why someone who you entrust will then take command of your entire back-end office without telling you. But anyway, that's just that. So we right now never, even if we allow you into our back-end office, we switch it right away so that we're in total control. We would have to authorize you for each entry. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Just want to share that.
Yeah.
I just remembered a story, and just since Hugh's still here, right? Where are you? Hugh. Remember the hack at Target? It was the biggest one at the time, a few years back, and Target got hacked, and they a lot of data went out. And I'm not sure if this story was true, but I believe that came in through the HVAC system. That somebody, when Todd was talking about the Internet of Things, some vendor who had access to the maintenance of their HVAC system did the same kind. They were trusted, like Patrick was talking about, and then they got onto their network via that HVAC system, which was not protected, not behind a firewall, apparently.
Exactly.
And then that is how they got all that data. So we all need a little expert help as we put in these really complex systems. Not only at our offices and our commercial spaces, but at our homes. You know, the refrigerator is not going to be able to go
Yeah, it's
through
a
the freezer to
refrigerator,
get to
dishwasher,
get to
anything.
your bank.
They may have plugged that leak because now when you want to access air conditioning systems, you do have to put in a password, but I'm not sure how much protection that is.
I think there's been a lot of work on that. I mean, basically, there's also their siloing them off, right? They're keeping the HVAC system off the main network. So somehow Target had integrated all this or something, and so they were able to access their back office stuff via the same network. There was no firewall between the two. It seems obvious to us now, but they probably thought, oh boy, we have these automated thermostats, you know, and went with.
There was something on the one of the news programs that someone was demonstrating how easy it was to hack into someone's home, and the guy sat there right on spot. He got in through like a toaster or something like that, got into the whole system in the house, got into the television, and he was watching them through the television. And he said, it's just, it's scary. I mean, I think, just how vulnerable we are to all this. So you gotta just be really careful about, like I said, password protection and firewalls and all that stuff to don't, and I could fall prey to it any moment. There's because I'd say every day I get about 5 suspicious emails or some kind of request or something that I look at it. I said, I just delete it. If someone's that interested in contacting me, they can contact me some other way, but I don't want to take a chance. By the way, on another thing, Helene and I just watched a documentary, which is really fascinating. It's kind of off subject, not completely. It's called Tinder Swindler. It's a true story about this guy and how on Tinder he would meet women and he would do this whole love thing. He posed as this rich, working for a diamond company or whatever, and it was a Ponzi scheme. He'd go from one woman to the other, and he would just he was actually poor as complete be, but he was buying all sorts of stuff, going to all over the world, and all these women got just screwed out of money, and I don't want to give away the ending of it, but it was shocking what how our government laws are, and it's how weak they are. And this guy's still out there. But anyway, if you're interested in this kind of, but it's just, it's just so many criminals and predators out there that you just have to be wary of. I could show you a recent video. It's a book trailer video for a client that actually, in a somewhat remote way about it. The subject is the website database getting hacked, and it's, if you'd like to watch it, or I'll save it for my next talk, unless we have more questions. So,
well, Jaime texted me back. Well, Jaime and Victor texted me back, and they confirmed that they do that service you're talking about, the testing the systems.
Yeah, it's penetration test or pen test. Good to know.
Well, that's all we got.
Yeah, they'll be getting an email from me right after the meeting. Guys, Jaime a
Click the link below.
You guys haven't used him, he's great. They've used those guys for at least 15 years. I was hacked, and they were able to fix it within an hour. No, I guess I had a virus attack, and they were able to just jump right on it. So yeah, it's time to call Jaime. And my insurance person. What else did I learn here?
I think Bob brought up a good point that I hadn't even thought of, is all the passwords that we've got that aren't stored in, because we just went through using Lauren to do the trusts and our estate planning. I've got all that set up, and I've got it backed up in a safe box. But as far as passwords for various things, I don't have a record, and I don't really want to keep it out with that. So, but have it in a safe box, probably with a note that's where we find it.
Todd, I think that might be a good subject that Lauren and I could do, or if you're looking for a future meeting. I don't know if it's too narrow for the group, but yeah, how do you protect your passwords? Is everyone's going to have this problem. Bob,
I have a question for you. don't people use these password programs that where you keep them all together and then they update them and change
And you
them?
got to remember the big number. So the big number's got to, yeah, it's got a number this long, and all your passwords are done. Maybe Jaime can talk a little bit. He could join us and talk about how to do that. But the deal, at some point, there's a number, there's a password you've got to have, whether it's this one main password that unlocks 100 other passwords, or it's the 100 other passwords. Yeah. And where do you put it? Do you tattoo it on your arm? I mean, I don't know what you do.
It's going to be facial recognition or fingerprint. So you just have to.
In the future, yeah.
So you just have to have the body, you know, just the you know, that's.
I don't know, if a dead person's fingerprints would work just as good as we gonna dig them up and do a
at least for a period of time, right?
So the hacking might be like, you know, a body not present. Oh, sorry, you have the right password. The body's not present.
But yeah, got to think about those things. They're a new type of asset that, as everyone's pointing out, Bitcoin and the rest, they're only accessible through a key. And if you don't have that key, you're screwed. So interesting new world as far as those go. Yeah.
Something I learned is Jude just said about because I don't do cryptocurrency, but it was just, did you say that if you don't enter the correct password after 3 tries, you lose everything?
Yes.
Like, how many times? Okay, everybody, I want to show of hands. How many times have you tried to get into something and you've been blocked because you've gone to everybody? I mean, good God, I mean, that's crazy. You lose all your money through cryptocurrency.
And it's a self-generated ID that you have to remember. So it's long. It's right, Bob. I think it's like 11, 12 digits.
Yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, there's this famous case out there. I thought it was like 10 tries, and somebody who's got 200 million in cryptocurrency forgot his thing, and he's on his 8th try, and he doesn't want to do his 9th or 10th, whatever. It's been all written up on the web and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that one of the biggest issues with that is just the anxiety of having, you know, your fortune disappear because you forgot the number, or you didn't put it in the right place, or you're too nervous to type it correctly. I mean, the whole thing is just.
So if you know somebody's username, you could deliberately lock them out.
What are we talking about? I mean, a crypto key, isn't it like 12 or 18 characters or something?
But what he's saying is you could deliberitely enter it in 10 times incorrectly and take their money from them, or wipe them out. Oh, I hadn't really thought of that sort of malicious.
That's the kind of thinking I like, Curtis. Yeah.
So this is Michael again.
Free subscription to the dark web with that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
This is Michael again. I'm going to add something. The whole notion of hacking started about 55 years ago, and you've seen the term phishing with a PH. The reason it has a PH is because the original hackers weren't hacking computers, because there weren't any. They were hacking phone systems, and they learned how to do whistles and clicks that got them free long distance. But they also did some social engineering, like they would call the phone company and tell them some story about how they needed XYZ, and then they'd get access to some account, and then they would expand their reach that way. So in that vein, I was a victim of fraud late last year, and again, almost a month ago. There's a scam that goes around where somebody contacts you and says, hey, I'd like to have some work done on my house. They'd like to have you do the windows or pressure wash the patio or whatever it is. And I'm not there right now, but you know, what do you charge? And so you go through the whole negotiation, and they give you the address, and you do a Google, or you do a drive-by, and you do the estimate. And then they say, well, I'm going to send you a cashier's check. And oh, by the way, this other vendor could be a flooring contractor, could be a plumber for the sewer lateral, whatever. In addition to the work you're doing, this guy's going to do a bunch of work. I'd like to pay you and have you pay them. But here's a cashier's check. Well, I thought a cashier's check was pretty much bulletproof. They are not. So if somebody won't meet you in person and you haven't met them, and they want to pay you with a cashier's check, you should be very suspicious about that. I actually figured it out through the Federal Trade Commission's website, found out that the routing number wasn't accurate, and saved myself $2,200. Instead, it was only $35 for a bounce check fee through my bank. But something to think about. If something seems off in the transaction, either check out the title to the property, or if you do receive a cashier's check, make sure you check those routing numbers against the Federal Trade Commission site.
I hope everybody knows this, but just in case you don't, IRS is never going to call you and threaten you with prison. Okay, and there's these scams out there where if you don't do something, this is IRS criminal investigation and we're coming after you or whatever. Never will they contact you like that. So just a warning out there. I once got a letter, there's a letter about doing contracts, oh, we need you to look over this contract for a shipping boat, blah, blah, blah. I took some of the verbiage of the letter and put it in Google, and up popped a scam with the same exact letter and a whole description about it. So, take the words or take something and put it in Google, and chances are scam is going to come up immediately. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Bob. Yeah, we've told that to people that if you get some notice like that in an email, copy part of that. Like one of the things that we get is our clients contact us with a website or whatever, saying we looked at your website and you're using our compromised, it's a copyrighted material. We're going to sue you, blah, blah, blah. Click on this, do whatever. Copy the thing, paste it into Google, and more times than not, it'll come up and say, yes, it's another scam. This is going out to everybody. And if you get a notice like that, contact us or contact whoever did the work, and they can, to verify that that your site's fine. But it's just another one of those things that scam that's going around.
And as long as we're talking about scams, you all have received an email supposedly from me at some time or another saying I'm stuck someplace, some foreign place, and I need money, and please send me, a Visa card or something. I am never going to call you guys. I have lots of people I would call. I love you all dearly. You are not the people I'm calling.
Yeah, I didn't believe it. It's spelled discreetly. I just say something, and at the very end it says contact me discreetly, or it's got the wording was off.
I showed it as a sample, like one of your things. Yeah, it said I'm really busy. Don't call me, just email me back. And
yeah, well, guess what? If I ever need anything from you guys, honest to God, I will pick up the phone and call you. And I hate the phone, so if I'm really needing something, I promise you I will call you, and you'll know it's me. I mean, and I would never send out anything like that, but it's just crazy the things that people do. I own a rental place in Massachusetts that I put up on Airbnb and VRBO, and I regularly get the same email over and over and over again saying, my wife and I would like to come visit. My company's going to write you a check for this, and please confirm that these dates are available. And it's crazy because it's like, okay, you're going through a rental company. Why in the world would I somehow, call you or email you or text you outside of the safety of the rental company? It's crazy. People do all kinds of nutty things. But it just goes to show that everybody wants your money and everybody wants to try and get you in some way, shape, or form.